So, have you guys gone through that RE framework? I told you, right, to go through that initialization and get transaction state and try to see as an overview basically what it's trying to do over there. Have you guys gone through that? Did you guys basically face any issue there or any concern before starting the session?
Nothing from my end.
Okay, Sadan, what about you?
You're very clear. I understand about the four stages of the.
Can you come a bit louder? Actually, your voice is very low for me.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, but it's very low. Anyway, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
Mhm.
like I said, um, the stages, like it's very like I know about the four stages: the
Mhm.
initiation,
Mhm.
the get process is you process the initiation, and then you have the ending stage, and that's as far as I was able to get to. It I was able to
Okay.
create the framework, but
Mhm.
I haven't set it up yet.
Okay. No worries. Let's just start then. I'll share my screen and you guys do let me know like if you are able to see my screen or not. Okay. Just a second. All right. So hope you guys are able to see my screen.
Yes.
Okay. So we are going to talk on today's topic. Like very first, I would like to go through that this template basically what it does. Okay. And then I'll basically give you some glimpse about what the each state is doing and all those things. So very first, let's talk about RE framework template wise, like what exactly it do for us, right? So that is the main question over here. Why RE framework? Why not the linear process or the basically sequential approach which we have seen so far, right? Or the iterative approach we have seen so far. Why not that? Why this skeleton which UiPath has provided us? Why that is useful for us? That is the main question over here. So whenever we are saying this RE framework, it's nothing but it's a template be provided by the UiPath site, okay, and it come up with the all the necessary stuff which require to do a automation, right? Like exception handling, proper logging mechanism in place, right? And it provide you the mechanism to basically take each record independently, process each record independently, and that record we say that as a transaction only, right? And that can be as a transactional process, like as a you basically can build this RE framework utilizing the queue. Also basically you can build this RE framework or utilize this RE framework if you don't have a queue but you would having a you can say some data table or some collection item. That time also you can utilize each of that row in a data table or each of the index in a collection as a transaction, and you can process that. What I mean to say over here, so let's talk about a linear part. Hope you guys are able to see my screen right now. What you guys are able to see, it's UiPath or what else? Can anybody
Yes.
confirm? Because my
Yes.
sharing part is giving me some issue today. You guys are able to see UiPath, right?
Yes.
Yeah, yes.
Okay. So now the very first step, let's basically, we can talk about like why the linear process is not suitable the candidate for here. Why we go with the RE framework. Guys, think about that. Linear process, whenever I'm saying that, it's about that one step, only one item or a step we do have to process, and that step is just maybe you're downloading some input file, some location, or maybe sending a mail notification to someone, or maybe something else XYZ, right? Which can be done at a once only, means there is no other items being there or no other data being present, only one data item is there, and that data item we would like to process. That can be a linear process, right? Like, for example, if I would say that an email is requesting and coming trigger, like suppose an email request coming and you would like to trigger your automation, which maybe gather the data and provide a reply to the sender, right? So that is a one step process. This process execute for each individual email. As we can say that if we having a multiple email over there, then this process maybe can run for a each individual email. But for a time being, think about that you do have only one email were there which you would like to process. So in that scenario, it can be a linear process. Agree with me? It's just that one item, you can basically do that via the creating a sequence in UiPath and you can automate it. Or maybe creating a flowchart and you can automate it. But why does this RE framework come? That is the question. So this robotic process enterprise framework, basically it's a template built using state machines. Okay. And it act as a starting point for production ready automation projects. Okay. And whenever we are saying production ready, especially the ones basically require a scalable processing. When I say scalable processing means that at a runtime, I would like to scale my automation as well. That won't be possible using our linear process. When I say scale, how come I say that scaling is being provided by the RE framework? Can anybody tell me? Because I already talked that part previously. How come a RE framework is basically allowing us to have a scaling mechanism in place rather than the old mechanism which we are using, right? Basically, just the sequential process or maybe a flow chart or something like that is not providing us. But how come the RE framework is providing us that mechanism, the scaling mechanism? Can anybody help me to know that?
Yeah, so it can be able to change in time, in due time, right? Or
Number
be
of
more
runtime, you
dynamic.
mean to say?
Change in dynamically. Like you could change the process dynamically, or you can modify it if needed, I guess.
Okay, that might be one case. Anyone else? Pratibha, Ratna, do you want to try? Like, what can be the, like, how come we saying that it can be a scalable process? Because I already talked that time. If you guys remember, I was talking about multi-bot architecture framework. In our last to last session, basically, we have talked about multi-bot architecture framework, where we say that at a runtime, if you want to run multiple bots to process a similar project at a time sequentially, we can do via this queue mechanism, and the RE framework basically providing us that only. Because it's utilizing the queue mechanism, right? You have an orchestrator queue, and queue is nothing but it allowing us to process each record individually, right? Agree or not? So that is basically a scaling at a runtime. If you would like to involve more bots, we can do that directly. That is can be doable. Again, that is can be doable with the sequential process. Now again, question arises that if that is the case, RE framework we can utilize, queue we can utilize to the linear process as well. Then why RE framework again? If queue is the only person who is basically allowing us to having a multi-bot kind of a RE structure, then that time, how come basically we are saying that it's only one approach? But scaling means it's not only about to basically scale as a process wise, but also tomorrow how much flexible my code is that tomorrow if something comes up, I can easily jot it down those steps in my code. I don't need to change much in the process. Let's suppose today you are doing just the downloading the file from a web system. What about you would like to basically not only download, but you would like to also perform some action on the downloaded data, and then basically upload that transform data into the SAP. Then that is another step, right? And if you go to the linear process, somehow maybe you need to change the structure or what a way you are delivering the process that time. You need to change little bit the architecture as well there. But in the RE framework, you don't need to do that because it's kind of a modular approach. It provides you a modular approach because each section is divided in each state. Whenever I say that each section means that if I would like to perform some processing things, I would like to go with the process state. If I would like to go with the initialization something, or to as a very basic step to create some instances of the application, I can go with the initialization state. If I would like to fetch the record, I will go with the get transaction data state. And at last, if I would like to basically send a final reporting mechanism is being there, then I can go with the end process state. So you can see that it has divided the sections in such a way that if tomorrow something comes up, I can basically easily scale that process. There is no basically architecture change is required in this. But if you go with your linear process where you have written one single file for your entire project, that time it's quite clumsy and it basically hard to manage that changes again. You need to change the code or the architecture what you have delivered that time. Agree? This part, it's very easy basically, right?
Yes.
So now,
Uh,
as yeah.
Oh, so you're saying that the RE frameworks allow you to run the code in a dynamic way where you can change and make modifications to it, or
Yes, like not only dynamic way. Think about this way, Sheldon. Right now, you have built a process. Okay, let me do one thing. Let me go to the home. Okay, let me create one more process over here. Okay, just dummy process. Right now, you have created this process. Okay, this process you have created. Think about this process is basically just a plain process. There is no RE framework in this, no skeleton, nothing is being there. First thing is that you need to write everything that is there. Okay, that we agree. But how come we are saying that scaling? Think about this. You have written everything inside this sequence. Whatever basically the process step is being required, like you need to basically, your steps are this. You need to log into ACME. Okay. Then second step maybe download uh, download the work items. Okay, that is maybe there. Then third step maybe you are sending the report. That is currently you are doing in this. Okay, think about this. These are the steps you are doing in this one single file in this sequence, and you have launched this process. It is running in a production environment. Tomorrow there is a requirement change in the process that business says that no, I want to basically not only send or download the work item, I would like to process those work item, and then basically final report I would like to see what basically processing has been done for each work item. Is it being successful? Is it being failed? Or is it being not processed? I would like to see those kind of things as well as a KPIs finally. And those items basically not only process, maybe in the third step, you need to, transform first of all. You need to transform the data, whatever basically you got as a work item. Then maybe fourth, you need to basically, you need to process each record in the SAP. Okay, in the SAP application, and then finally you need to send a report. So now you can see that the steps are getting increased over here, and if tomorrow you need to basically change the process, then again you need to write so many code over here in this single file, which is going to be clumsy. The one way is that you can basically again create multiple workflows, and have a, you can basically invoke those workflow over here, but it not solve the actual problem. If tomorrow again some more basically you can say steps being occur, you need to change little bit, you need to change the architecture of your process. Currently my single sequence, it won't allow me to follow these many steps if the process get changed. Agree or not?
yeah.
So this is what I'm trying to say. The RE framework won't have this. Basically, it providing you the mechanism that system, because it having its own states were there. It has divided each section in such a way that if tomorrow something comes up, I can easily write the code entire that particular section and deploy my code. There is no basically you can say issue over there to basically create another step or write another steps over there, right? Involving another steps. It's not hard and fast rule over here. But in the past cases, what we are doing that via the sequential process, that going to be very clumsy and it's going to be hard to deliver that way, right? That is why the RE framework come into the picture. Now it's lot talk about that. Then let's first talk about the basically why the RE framework exactly comes up. First thing is that, and that we have already talked. Now let's talk about what are the things this RE framework comes up. What are the default things were there over there in the RE framework basically. So just a second, I'll share my screen back. I know basically it's going to give me an issue. Yeah. Hope you guys are able to see now. Right?
Yes.
Okay. So very first, when you go to your data folder structure, you do have a config file. What this config file says that whatever project settings, whatever the settings related to your project to run, those are being kept into this config file, which bot going to be, there is a workflow being written in a UiPath RE framework, which the basically help us to read this setting data, constant data and asset data. And at a runtime, bot can utilize those settings to basically perform some actions on the basis of the settings. Okay, and why, what is this setting? This setting is nothing but like you do have a, maybe just think about like you have a car has its own setting basically, right? Before starting the car, you need to sit into the car, you need to basically put a key over there, you need to start a car. Those are nothing but the settings to run a car, right? The same thing over here in the UiPath RE framework. To run a process, there might be some settings being in place. Those are being kept over here in the RE, in this config file, which UiPath RE framework has provided us. Now, question being asked, what is this setting, constant and asset tabs means? What are the things goes in the setting tab? What are the things goes into the constant tab? And what are the things goes into the asset tab? So the setting tab always basically allow us to store the data which are more related to the business things. Means that if there is some URL of the application, I can basically store over here application URL. If there are some credential related thing, because asset I can't store anyway, credentials I am going to store in a UiPath orchestrator only, but I cannot keep it inside the asset block. Can anybody tell me why I cannot keep it inside this asset tab? Why should I keep those things inside the setting tab? Why not I can keep it over here? If I do have a credential, let's suppose I do have a credential access need to be created. Think about like you do have a ACME site. Currently, we are doing to automate this application, which is also require or login first of all. So how basically we can log in? You can just need to, first of all, you need to store some credentials. And where you will store the credential, you will store the credential in the UiPath orchestrator as credentials type. But why not I can keep it those credential type inside my asset tab? That is the question. Can anybody tell me? If you guys has gone through the state machines of the initialization state, you should aware about that, what exactly happening over there.
Security reasons.
No security concern?
Yeah.
Nothing. No, not like that. Anybody? Yash, Pratibha, Ratna? Then what you guys have did, if you haven't gone through so far, yeah, go ahead, please. Yes, you were saying something. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, enter the exit point and transition point.
Sorry?
You're asking me state machine, na?
I'm asking, my question is very simple. You do have a credential asset. Currently, I'm
Yep.
basically, having a, just a second. I have this application, okay, UI demo, which require a login very first, right?
Yeah.
And it require a username and password, okay? My question is that if I need to basically store the credentials, because config file is already being present for me, and it has setting tab, it has constant tab, and it has asset tab. And to store, I cannot basically, hard code the credential in my code. I need to store somewhere in, first of all, in the orchestrator, and that key I need to specify over here in my config file. Agree this
Yeah,
part,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Now my
Indeed.
question is that in which tab I should specify my credentials key so that my bot can easily read those credential asset.
In the asset tab.
Okay. Anyone else?
In the settings, if in case if we put in the assets, we'll get an error that the config file we are unable to read in the runtime.
How come? Like you can put it over here. There is nothing issue like that. See, let me create one by one. So what we are going to do, let me give you some glimpse about this process as well. What we're gonna do today. So we going to automate this UI demo application, which will having some transaction item also. Let me open those transaction item for you. So we do have some transaction item files as well over here for us. So this is basically not this one. Just a second. Not this one. So we do have some transaction files over here, UI demo transaction file, and it has provided us 3 columns: cash in, on us check, and not on us check. We would like to process each of the item from this transaction file individually. Each record is going to be as a one transaction item because we would like to process each record individually. We would like to basically perform some action in this record in this application, and then finally basically we will maybe send a final notification or something. Okay, that is our task today. But you are saying that we can't store. So let me just create a asset in the orchestrator. Add asset, create new asset, and let me UI demo underscore credential. And over here, this is my username, and let me put my password. This is not my password. Okay. I'm going to create this credential asset. And now you are saying that it won't allow, it will basically, you are saying that it won't allow. What you said, that we cannot put it inside this config asset file. Why?
Like in the like we are using the credential type in the settings tab only instead of in assets. The type asset type should also be given inside.
Sorry, just a second. Can you come again? I just basically thinking about this asset side. Can you come again now?
Like here in my office, like we use asset type it as a credential and then give the orchestrator folder name and give the key and value there and place the assets in case if it is an credential type, we place it in settings tab.
But why does it has happened, guys?
Yeah, that's what I understood the question.
But this is not a right answer. Like, this is not a right answer. Basically, why not? First thing is that you are saying that, okay, that is fine. You keep it inside the setting tab. You won't keep it inside the asset tab. That is you are trying to say. But my question is that, first thing is that which tab? You said that setting tab. Okay. But why? Why in the setting tab? Why not you guys have gone through the code? Basically, I told you, just basically open the initialization state in the config file. Here, basically, it is reading the config file. If I scroll it down, there is a workflow being written over here, init all settings workflow. What this init all settings workflow does, it requires 3 arguments. One is that config as a basically, out config, which is nothing but a dictionary for us. Okay. It basically string an object type of dictionary, it will return to us. It required 2 things mainly as an input argument. One is that config seed basically. What config seed it would like to read? It basically going to read settings and constant, and then it will basically require a path of the config file as well, which is nothing but inside our data folder. In our project, we do have a data folder, and there we do have this config.xlsx file. This only it requires. Now, if I go to the this init all settings.xaml file, you can see that it first basically going to read the config seeds, which are nothing but one my basically setting tab, and the second thing is that is my constant tab. This is basically reading over here. This part is once completed, it's going to read the asset part. And can anybody now tell me why I'm saying that I cannot keep it inside the asset tab? To seeing this code, would you guys able to recall something, why I cannot keep it inside the asset tab and why I should basically keep it always inside the setting tab? By looking to this code also, you not able to recall it? Okay, no worries. Over here in the asset tab, what you are doing, you are basically placing a key value pair, or you can say name and your asset value, what you have basically created as a in an orchestrator, what name you have given your asset, you are giving over there, right? It basically utilizing that only. It going to read the asset tab, it going to looping through that data table, and then it going to read the get orchestrator asset. Can anybody tell me now what this get orchestrator asset activity does? What value is it able to read it?
It will get the rows of assets.
It able to read the plain kind of text, right? It couldn't able to read the credential type of asset. That is the answer basically. Why you guys are not following the things, guys? It's just that it basically reading. That is why I basically in the very first session says that don't mug up anything in my class. Just to try basically understand the mechanism, what it exactly doing over here. So over here in the get orchestrator asset, in my last class when I have explained to you this get orchestrator asset activity, I told you it is meant to be read for plain or integer, boolean or text type of data, not for the credential type of data. You couldn't able to read this activity as a credential type of data. It will throw an error to you. If I go right now, let me keep it this thing. Let me save it. Just a second. Let me save this data and close everything here. Let's debug this part for a time. Your basically explanation, I'm debugging it. So see one by one what it's trying to do. It go to the config file. It first read the above config file. Let me go. It first read this config seed, whatever basically we have in the setting and constant, it has read that and store those inside the config file as a key value pair. Whatever basically name we have given over there, that is become as a key of the dictionary, and whatever value we have given there, that is become as a value of the dictionary. That key basically value, right? But over here, when we go to the asset tab, if you see right now, it got failed. It's saying to me, could not find a UI demo application path. Currently, that is different. Let's basically ignore. I haven't created that asset. Let's ignore that part. Let's continue on this. Now see that there is another error being occurred over here. Get asset does not work with asset type as credential. Got it? Or not? Why we not kept it inside the asset block? Now you guys understood or not?
Yes, Gopal.
So what is the reason behind this, basically rationale behind this not keeping inside the any credential inside the asset tab is that because in the RE framework, in the initialization init all settings file, we have utilized the get orchestrator activity over there, which is meant to be read any plain text, not the security concern or you can say credential type of data. It is not meant to be read the credential type of data. Okay, and whenever basically we would like to read the credential type of data, we first need to store that credential key inside the setting tab, not in the asset tab. Got it? If we have stored anything which is a plain text like integer, boolean, or maybe a text format, we can store it directly inside my asset tab. That is fine. But if there is basically a requirement, I need to store some, you can say, uh, what I would say, if I would like to store some basically credential type of data, that I shouldn't basically store inside this asset, I should basically store inside the setting tab. Got it? Now what is the rationale behind this? Yes or no?
Yes.
If there is any concern, just ask
So-
the question, because
So it's used. So this folder is used for storing credentials. Yeah. Because we can store it inside of the the asset.
Is it for me only, or you guys also hear very slow to sudden? I can't hear
Me.
you sudden. I'm very
Yeah.
sorry on that. I'm not
Oh,
able to
wait.
hear you properly what you're saying.
Wait, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yes. I just said that this folder is used for storing credentials because you can't store it inside of the asset. Is that what you're trying to imply, or?
No. I just basically said that already very clearly that this get orchestrator asset activity is being utilized in this init all settings, which is meant to be read the plain text, not the credential type of data. And if you need to read the credential type of data, you can't go with this get asset activity. And as we are going to, if we're going to store anything which is credential type inside this asset tab, it will fail at a runtime because I have utilized there as a get asset activity. How come my get asset activity can read the credential type of data? Is it not clear or what it is? Basically, where you guys are lagging here? Sudden any confusion now still you do have?
Um, so you say in the initial all settings file has cannot get it can't it can't get the asset because it's I'm just trying to put it together.
It is won't be able to get it if you store it inside the asset tab. It won't be able to get it because in your code, in your init all settings file, you have utilized a get orchestrator asset activity, which is meant to be read the plain text. When I say plain text, how many ways do you can create how many types you can create the asset in the orchestrator? One way is to text, one way is to boolean, one way is to integer and credential type. When I say plain text, I can read using this get asset activity, this text, this bool, this integer. But whenever I do have a credential type of data, there is a different activity being provided by UiPath called get credential activity, which is meant to be read the credential type of data, not this plain text of data. The plain text I cannot use basically, or I cannot get it via this get asset activity. So that is why if we don't want to basically get a issue in my at a runtime, we always need to kept the credential type of data inside my settings tab, and at a runtime basically my bot will not fail, but I in whenever basically or wherever basically I'm having that credential being utilized, I need to utilize that get credential activity, and then I can basically read those credentials. Via the get asset activity I cannot.
Okay.
This is what I would like to basically very simple. I would like to explain to you guys that what the reason behind that. So I'm creating another asset over here called just a second, called UiPath application path, because my bot failed previously. UiPath application path it couldn't able to find. So this application path is nothing but the path of the location where it can basically find this UI demo application which we are trying to automate. That is meant to be that only. Okay. So let me create that. And now we have created the asset. And over here, we're going to remove this from here and store it inside the credential. Instead of asset tab, we're going to store it inside the asset setting tab over here. Okay. So that is the one. Now we were saying about what are the things goes into the setting tab and what are the things goes into the constant tab and asset tab. Asset tab we understood, whatever basically we have kept it inside the orchestrator as a plain text. Those things, those asset will go over here inside the asset. The asset over here will always be a name of the asset which we have given in the orchestrator, right? And the value, or you can say just a second, and the name over here, it will go anything whatever basically you would like to give, but this is the key via which you would basically fetch the value, not via this is basically refer to fetch in the activity. Basically UiPath utilizing that. If you see that get orchestrator asset, it utilizing row asset to read the asset value, but in the config file it is storing in the name, right? In the name it basically giving the key and value, whatever basically it has read from here, it is storing the value over here. Got it? Or any confusion on this? This dictionary concept you guys got or not? Okay, I'm hoping that your silent is being saying that you guys now understood. Now, then very first, basically, we have, as I said, that we have a transaction item over here, right? I shown to you like we having a one transaction data file, which is basically this UI demo.transaction. So very first, what we need to do, we need to create the transaction item for our process so that we can process it properly, right? So that is the very first task. So because we are going to utilize the queue over here in our process, so we have created a UI demo queue in the orchestrator, and that name over here we have given in the setting file. So whatever thing being related for a business purpose, we kept it inside the setting block, and it has like orchestrator queue name, what is the queue folder basically, right? This is not being required. We can remove it anyhow. It is not being required. I'll just kept it same, but keep it blank so that it won't break it. And then basically a log business process name, right? Process name means that whenever the bot is going to start, it will write some log you saying that this process execution started. So over here is nothing but this is my process name, right? And then basically I have given over here a credential asset and a manual transaction threshold. This manual transaction threshold I'll come later, because this is something basically we are going to, as a business scenario over here, we do have that whenever the sum of this let me go back to my transaction file again. Let me keep it open so that you guys see that. So whenever basically this transaction, this transaction threshold, what we have kept over here, this is meant to be basically if the value of the cash in on a check and not on a check sum is basically larger than this threshold, we will not process that. We will throw a business exception, means that the business is responsible for performing action on those particular transaction item where the on a check and cash in kind of data is basically goes more than 10,000 something, right? That is a business rule basically, which we have written in the code. I'll show you that where it is. Then come to this constant side. What we kept in the constant side, first thing is that it is more related to the technical side. Means whatever the technical things we would like to store, or a bot is being required at a runtime, those technical things we always going to kept it inside the constant block. There are a couple of mandatory things which I would like to talk. One is this key, and one this is the key, and there is one more key, basically consecutive system exception. Yeah, this one. These three things people ask so many in the interview, basically what it meant to be and what is the use of this key values over here. So first thing is that max retry number. Guys, you guys are everyone is aware about that. Whenever we are going to create a queue, we can specify that whether we would like to auto retry or not, right? Basically we can having a mechanism over here, auto retry mechanism, and we can specify how many number of time we would like to retry it. I have already shown to you the example that whenever a system exception being occurred, UiPath queue has the functionality being in place. It will create the transaction item in a place again, and which is basically mark it previous transaction item as retried and create a same replica of that particular transaction item. If you guys remember, yes or no?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so this is basically what this key meant to be over here. This max retry number. This is very much confusing because people don't understand that what is meant to be this maximum retry number value over here being given. So whenever guys we are using a UiPath queue in our project in a RE framework, if we are using a UiPath queue to basically as a transactional process, then that time if we have enabled the auto retry mechanism, and if you have given any number of retries over here in the orchestrator, this value is no longer being accepted in the process. Means whatever I have given over here, let's suppose maximum retry number 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, it doesn't matter, because currently I am utilizing the UiPath queue retry mechanism, which is basically I have specified how many number of time it's going to retry. Maybe 5 times, 4 times, 3 times, that I have is already specified. So this value doesn't make any sense that time. But whenever I don't have a queue in place, let's suppose I am utilizing a RE framework, but I am not going to utilize the UiPath queue. Maybe the data I have in a data table or in a list or something, basically in a collection, which I would like to iterate one by one, basically, looping through the data. Currently, RE framework itself provides us the looping mechanism over here. If you guys have seen that. So if I go back, you can see that it kind of a looping only. It's a iterative approach over here. If you see, it fetch the get transient data, it process it, and then again go back to the get transient data. So you can see that it kind of a loop only, right? It is basically continuously doing the same step, getting it, process it, again going to get it, again going to process it, means one by one it will fetch the data, process it, and then go to the get transient state. And when the exit condition means when the loop is get exit, whenever there is no data being present in a queue or whatever basically collection you have utilized, let's suppose data table or a list, if you have processed all the indexes of the list or data table, then it will basically exit from the loop. It will go to the end process. But for a time being, if you see the get transient data, whenever a new transient data is able to find, it will go to the process state, it will process it. But at the time of processing, if it is get failed due to some system exception, due to some business exception, it will do some step, but it will follow the same step again. If you see that, if it is occur a system exception, you can see that it occur a system exception, it will go to the initialization state back. Why? Because it will go to the very first step where it has started, means it will going to initialize the application back again, and then basically fetch the transaction item again, and then process it. So that is the basically a system exception mean. But whenever a business exception or a transaction item is get successful, it will always go to the get transaction data state after basically completing the process transaction data. So whenever the processing is being completed, if there is any business exception is being occurred, means that known exception for us, like we have already know that there is an input file should be present in a location, but it is not there, then we are saying that it's a business exception. So in that case, we will go directly to the get transaction data to process the next transaction item. We will not bother about that particular transaction because that is going to be handled by the business user, right? But currently, if it is the system exception being occurred, it will go to the again to the initialization state. It will try to initialize it from the beginning, then for getting the data back again, and then process it. So you can see that kind of an iterative approach over here it has utilized. The RE framework is nothing but it's kind of state machine, but this transition basically, the way basically we have utilized this transition, it is allowing us to having a iterative approach. Got it? So far?
Yes.
Okay.
sir,
Yeah. So over here, basically we whenever we having this max retry number, if we have utilized the RE framework queue mechanism, basically we have utilized orchestrator queue in RE framework, that time this max retry number is no longer being valid. We are going to utilize the orchestrator queue retry mechanism only. Now you will say that, sir, let's suppose maybe we have utilized the RE framework, okay, or a queue basically, but we haven't enforced the auto retry. Does it impact if we have given any number of maximum number of retry over here in the config file? No, because we have utilized the queue mechanism, it is no longer valid. So you can see the description as well, must be 0 if working with orchestrator queue. If we are using orchestrator queue, this is no longer valid. But if the robot will retry the same transaction item, is we have whatever basically number of item we have given over here, if we have not utilized the, you can say queue we haven't utilized in our process, then that time it will going to retry that number of times what we have given over here. That count it will going to utilize. That code is being already written in a process in a RE framework, that if this key is being specified, our process is going to be retried that many times if it get failed due to the system exception only. And it only applicable whenever we haven't utilized the RE framework. In a RE framework, we haven't utilized the queue. Got you? Or not? Or any confusion over here?
So that process only retries if there's a system exception.
Yes, this is only retry whenever the system exception being occurred, and it is only applicable. This key is only applicable if we haven't utilized the queue in our process. Utilize the orchestrator queue, then definitely this process is this key is no longer valid in our code, and it will follow the whatever the queue retry basically we have given, whatever the number of times retry count we have given in the at the time of creating the queue, it will follow that particular max retry number. Got it or not? Or any confusion on this?
Got it.
Okay. The second thing is that max consecutive system exception. This is very much simple, guys. Max consecutive system exception means that whenever a system exception, let's suppose there is a system exception being occurred due to the application failure. Let's suppose the bot is couldn't able to launch the application, and we having a 10 transaction item present in our orchestrator queue. Think about that. If we are not able to launch the application for the first transaction item, and then for the second again, then for the third again, does it make sense? We should process again all those transaction item whichever are being present in a queue, because we having a same exception being occurred that bot couldn't able to launch the application, right? Does it make sense that it to basically perform again the same step for all of the transaction item? No, right? If
No.
we are getting a system exception, system failure due to some unknown error, which is basically maybe a application issue or something else, if it is occur continuously 3 times, bot will say that I don't want to process again, means I don't want to process further the other transaction item. I don't want to fail those. I just would like to stop it there itself. So that is the mean of this max consecutive system exception. Means that how many times consecutively we got this system exception that it will track. If it is 3 times, then it will stop it there itself. Any confusion over here in this key? Max consecutive system exception, what is meant to be? Got it or not?
Yes.
So you have, let's suppose, you have a process, right? You are trying to launch an application, maybe a SAP application. That SAP application, due to some reason, it is not able to launch it today. Okay, first transaction item process failed due to the same. Second transaction item failed due to the same. Third transaction item due to the same. Then what is the over here? What is the reason why we are basically again doing the same step for all the other transaction item? If you know that that same system exception being occurred for all the other transaction item as well, it is in vain, right? So we can basically stop it there itself. So to stop it, UiPath has provided this key which they have utilized in the code to basically handle it in such a way that if consecutively 3 times the system exception being occurred, it will stop it there. It will not process the other transaction item. Your project is basically, or your process is forcefully stopped over there. Got it? Yes or no? Pratibha, Ratna, Sheldon?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, I got it.
Now this last one is should mark job as faulted. Guys, this is very much important and people ask this question also. Let me go to this as well. So whenever basically you having a job is being running over here in the job, okay? So let me just basically, show you this. So in the job, you do have basically whenever job is being running over here, let's not focus on right now, or maybe I can do that or not. Let me see if I can basically run it here in the yeah, maybe I can do UiPath exception handling. Okay, let me run this UiPath exception handling. Okay, and now if I go to the you can say UiPath over here. So if I see over here in the job section, you can see that one job is being running, and I have 2 options over here. One is called stop and one is called kill. People ask this question, please note it down. What is the difference between stop and what is the difference between kill? First thing is that whenever I am saying that stop means that it is not forceful stop. If I press this stop button, means whatever the transaction item or whatever the item currently bot is basically executing, it will complete that and then it will stop it. It's not basically a forceful stop there. Okay. But whenever I press this kill button, means that I would like to forcefully close everything. I don't want to bother about that whether a transaction item is being completed or not completed, or it is in between. I don't care. I would like to stop it there itself. That is the difference between stop and kill. Stop means it will basically first, whatever the transaction it is processing right now, it will complete that step. Not only transaction, means whatever the step it is doing right now, it will first complete that step and then stop it. But whenever I'm saying the kill, means that it will first basically, it will don't bother about that whether any process is being running, any step it bot is executing right now or not. It will directly kill the process, forcefully stop it everything. If I kill it over here, you can see that if I kill it, everything will go on over here. See, stopped, state has stopped, and it will basically stop it directly. But when I say that, whenever I'm basically, if I run it again, let me run this again and let me show you this stop again first of all. So if I run it over here again, so you can see that if I have basically pressed it stop, it says that state as stopping, means it is not stopped yet. It will first complete this, basically it will first complete this, whatever step it has started running, it will complete that part, give me the output, and then basically it will stop it. It will not process the other further transaction item, but it will basically complete that particular task, which is basically currently it is running. But the kill is that it is going to be forcefully stop it there itself. Got it or not? This stop and kill.
Yes,
Yeah.
I got it.
Okay. Now UiPath has utilized, if you guys have gone through this get transaction data state, they have utilized a check stop signal. This check stop signal is nothing but that only, guys. It is meant to be utilized in the RE framework in the code itself, so that to identify whether basically anyone at a runtime press this stop or not. Whenever a job is being running, is someone has pressed the stop or not? If someone has pressed the stop, what RE framework says that, okay, the stop signal is basically, I got it as true. It will give you a true or false only. It will continuously monitor that in a job, does someone has basically pressed the stop or not. If someone has pressed the stop, it will give you a true or false. If it is true, what it does, it says that stop process requested, then it will basically mark the transaction item as nothing. It will mark the transaction item as nothing, means that if the transaction item is get nothing, if you see your state basically over here, if you see your state over here, you can see that no data transition, means that this only. Whenever basically transaction item is nothing, it will go to, is not nothing, it will go to the process transaction data state. If the transaction item is nothing, it will go to the end process state. Means that if anyone basically press this stop signal from the orchestrator job, it will stop it there itself, and it will not stop it there itself. It will first complete that particular transaction item, and then when it is coming back to the next transaction item to fetch it, it will monitor that, oh, okay, I found that there is a stop signal I found from the orchestrator, so it will mark this transaction item, which is nothing but a queue item, basically type as a transaction item is nothing but, over here if I show you, the transaction item is nothing but a queue item, which we have already seen. Whenever we having a UiPath get transaction item activity, it will provide us the queue item type of data only, right? So this transaction item, it will mark it as nothing. And when it is marked it as nothing, the transition will run over here. You can see that the no data will run, because the no data says that if the transaction item is nothing, I should basically go to the end process state. I shouldn't basically go to the process transaction state. Means that there is no longer, now it will going to process the other transaction item. It will stop it there itself. But it will not stop it in between. It will first complete the task, then it will stop it. That is the basically use of this should stop activity. Everyone got it or not? Or any confusion here? Okay. Now, okay. Now I basically talking about this should mark job as faulted. So guys, what is happening over here? Whenever earlier, what has happened in 2019 or 2021, 22, UiPath doesn't have this functionality that whenever a job is being running, okay, whenever a RE framework project is being running, and if it is get failed due to the any error in this initialization step, it won't mark the job as faulted. Anyhow, basically, if it is failed in the get transition data state or process transition data state, it will maintain the transition because we are utilizing the transition over there. It will maintain that status in our queue. But we don't have anything to monitor if it is get failed inside the initialization state only. If it is get failed, it won't keep it the status of the job as faulted. It will always give you in the job status as successful only. Even though it is get failed in the initialization state, the job status you will get as successful. But when you go to inside your view job logs, then only you will basically identify, oh, there is something wrong inside the initialization state. Due to that only it get failed. Then only you basically able to find out. So they come up with the solution on this part that they have given over here should mark job as faulted. Whenever this key is being true, so what it does is basically, reading this key, and if it is get failed in an initialization state, it will mark the job as faulted. Okay, the status over here comes, the job has its own status. How many status the job has? If you go to the filter over here, you can see that you have multiple status filter over here. So if I show you state, so you have running, you have stopping, you have faulted, you have successful, you have stopped, suspended, resumed. So it will come to this faulted status only when you have marked this, basically should mark job as faulted as true. And if your processes get failed at the initialization state, it will basically mark the job status as faulted. Earlier it was not giving you as faulted, it is giving you successful only. But when you go to the inside view log jobs and when you monitor your logs, then only you could able to find that, okay, there is something wrong over the initialization state. But now they have given the mechanism as well. If like we say that max consecutive system exception over here. If let's suppose we do have 3 times the same system exception being occurred, or not only same system exception being occurred, so bot will basically fail. If the bot will fail, we know that in RE framework, whenever a process transition state, any system exception being occurred, where it will go, Shadon will tell me. If any transaction is get failed in the process transaction state, where my transition will go?
It will go. Oh, if the process, if it fails, it's gonna go right back to the initialization stage.
Correct. It will go to the initialization state. So it will go in the initialization state. And here, if you see the code being already written, if I go down, let me go a little bit down. And here, if you see that there is a code being written, check if orchestrator name is specified. This is different. I'll talk on this as well. Just a second. Yeah, over here, this is a folder. All right, then kill process. Yeah, over here we are checking that if consecutive system exception is exceeded or not. Currently, what we are doing in this condition, if you guys can see, we are trying to compare whatever the consecutive maximum retry count we have given in the key, in this key. This is nothing but this key is basically reading over here, max consecutive system exception. And how it is reading, sorry. How it is reading, it is basically trying to use the config and providing the key over here so that it will get the value. Whenever in the key dictionary, we provide the key, we got the value. Okay. So it provide in the dictionary, it has provided this key over here and it got the value and trying to basically first typecast that to the integer and seeing that whether it is greater than 0 or not. Yeah, we have given over here maximum consecutive system exception is 3. So this condition is true. Then it says that and also means that first condition should be true and the second condition also be true. That is the mean of this logical AND, right? So over here, again, there is a variable is being utilized, this consecutive system exception. And this consecutive system exception is nothing but it's a counter, you can say, which is basically always going to increase whenever a system exception being occurred. Okay, it will basically increase by 1. So whenever I'll show you that where the code is being written. So once we're going to see one by one, so we'll see that. So consecutive system exception is basically for that only. Whenever a system exception being occurred, it will going to increase by 1. And now it in the second condition is saying that if the consecutive system exception counter is greater than the value we have given in a dictionary or in our config file, if it is greater than that, means that we have already reached the maximum limit. Now it will going to throw an exception over here. You can see that it is not doing anything. It is just throwing an exception over here. New exception message is nothing but over here is being written. So you can, if you go over here in config file, you can see that this is the exception message. It is reading from the config. This is the key, and this value it will get at a runtime. The maximum number of consecutive system exception was reached. So this is meant to with this only. And then over here, it is giving the counter value over here, how many time it has retried. So it has giving over here like concatenation of the two string, consecutive retry number, and then the variable value over here it is basically giving. And that's it. Whenever the system exception is being occurred, we know that in a initialization state, whenever any system exception is being occurred, it will go to the end process state, right? If there is no exception, it will go to the get transition data. But if there is any error is being occurred, it will go to the end process state. Got it or not? Everyone? You guys got it?
Wait,
Okay. All right. So let me just save everything over here in the asset as well. And now let's go to the UiPath queue. One more things I would like to basically talk before giving you the code walkthrough. So if I go to the queue over here, you can see that I have created one queue over here, UiPath training. Okay. Whenever we create a queue, basically, guys, we do have over here a property called upload items. One way is that if you manually would like to upload the transaction item to the queue, you can do via this property as well, upload items. And this upload item is nothing but it will allow you to browse your CSV file. You can browse that and you can upload that over here. It will create the transaction item for you. So like I have did over here, if you guys can see, I have created the transaction item for already for us, not on this in the UI demo. So if you can see over here, if I go to the view transaction, you can see that I have created almost basically 100 items over here, and all are these over here being created via the upload files only. You can try that approach. This is basically again the same what we have seen when basically we have talked about the bulk queue item activity. It has these property over here. You can see that process all independently and all or nothing. I basically already talked on this part, like process all independently and all or nothing means what it means to be say. If you guys are remember on this part, try to go through that session if you not remember. So now we have already the queue in place. The transaction item we have created over here, around 300 transaction item we have created. And what we're trying to do, we basically, this is our record we have already uploaded. Let me close this. So what we're gonna do, we wanted to basically fetch each record individually, one by one in our process. And what is the ask? The bot will read this data, cache in, honest check, not honest check, and then it will basically, go to this application over here. Let me show to you admin. This is my basically username and password. So if I log in over here, so you can see that this is the application will appear. What it does, it will basically put the data over here in the cache in, honest check, not honest check, put accept, and then basically process everything. It will basically do each and every transaction item, it will process it. But there is a condition being written over here, a business scenario condition is being written over here. If I show you, at the time of processing, we are checking that if the sum of cache in, honest check, and not honest check is greater than this, basically, if the transaction sum is greater than this value which we have given, the manual threshold value which I have already shown to you, that maximum threshold value which we have given 10,000 over there. If it is maximum of that, we are throwing a business rule exception saying that the sum of the transaction item exceeded the maximum allowed value. Means that is a exception case over here, and business need to manually handle this scenario because we are raising a business rule exception over here. And whenever in a RE framework, business rule exception is being occurred, it will always go to the get transition data state. Successful case also go to the get transition data state, and business rule exception also go to the get transition data state. But if any system exception is being occurred, it will go to the initialization state back again. Got it so far? Anyone has any question, anything before taking a 1 minute break?
So Gopal, can you repeat this one? B1.
Okay, so the business exception over here, we have hypothetically written this business exception. What we are trying to do? We are trying to sum this data, cash in, honest check, and not honest check. If the sum of this data is greater than 10,000, right now we have written, if it is
Yeah.
greater than 10,000, we would like to we would like to throw an exception in our code so that this situation is being handled by that particular transaction item, manually handled by the business user. The bot couldn't able to handle that scenario because it is exceeded the limit. Think about like you are going to the taking a loan, right? And you basically you have automated a process which is basically approving the loan for the user. Currently, you have put the limit in your config file. If it is more than 50 lakhs or something, the loan amount, then the business user manually check all the you can say credentials, whatever the user has provided, like the supporting document and all those things, manually review, right? Because the amount is very large. So that condition over here being written, it is nothing. It's just that we have written over here, we would like to basically check if the sum of cash in, honest check, and not honest check, if greater than that value is greater than the value, maximum threshold value which we have given in our config file. If that the case, then we would like to raise a business rule exception.
Got.
Right? So that is what, and in this, guys, we have created a 4 workflows over here inside the project section. So let's go one by one. We can see data folder we have already gone through. Over here we do have input folder, we do have output folder, and temp folder. Input means something basically for a bot as an input file. There are some input files, those are being kept inside this input folder. Not static, but runtime. If you would need to let's suppose you need to download a Excel file from a mails or from some application to before processing that. So after downloading, you can place it inside the input folder. Okay. Output is that what bot as an outcome being generated on the processing, right? That is become as an output. And there is a temp folder, means some temporary file. If you would like to kept it, those you can kept it inside the temp folder. Now there is a framework folder. Framework folder is nothing but these are the XAML file which UiPath has provided you. And we have already talked about this init all settings, right? Get transition data, we already know. Inside this basically workflow, we are utilizing a get queue item activity, from which basically we are trying to fetch the data from the queue one by one, right? So that is, these are the workflow auto populated by UiPath, or it is come with the RE framework itself in a framework section. There is a kill process. Close all application means if you would like to gracefully close the application, we will go with this close all application. But if it is also not able to close that, then we will go with the forceful kill, right? That is a kill process, right? So those are the basically mechanism is being written. Like I was talking about set transaction data status. We have already seen that how we will set the transaction status. So that is, they have kept it as the same, again, a separate workflow. Then retry current transaction means if you would like to, if you are not utilizing a RE framework, in a RE framework, if you are not utilizing a queue mechanism, if you would like to utilize some data table and collection item, that retry mechanism is being written over here already, right? So those are being come under the UiPath RE framework code itself. Take a screenshot. If let's suppose we would like to take a screenshot whenever a system exception is being occurred, that is the workflow is UiPath has already provided you, right? So it's a kind of a scale. How you will handle the exception handling, how you will do the logging, extra logging. Maybe if you would like to do, you can do that, but you don't need to write more code on them, right? So that we understood. Now there is another folder being over here we have created called UI demo. This UI demo is no longer part of this your RE framework. I have created this, and over here we have created four files, 4 file over here. One is that UI demo add transaction. This add transaction is nothing but we are trying to populate the data, the cache in cache, basically whatever we got from the queue, we would like to process that data inside the application. Basically, that is the main meaning of this add UI demo add transaction workflow. Then UI demo close means we would like to close the application. Forceful close means that it is not closing gracefully. We would like to close it forcefully. Then that is the use of this force close. Then UI demo open means we would like to launch the application. That is basically a open workflow being written over here, right? So this is basically your folder structure. Now, if I go to the RE framework code itself, code wise, let's follow quick. So over here, in a initialization state, guys, very first let me talk two things also. One is that argument. Guys, as we so far we have seen the argument were there in the workflows, right? Every workflow has input and output argument. But your project can also have an input and output argument as well. An entire project can also have an input and output argument. So this is nothing but over here argument section in your project label over here. If you can see that we are inside a project label in a main.xaml file we are, and the main.xaml file having a two argument which is going to be provided at a runtime whenever we are going to run a process from the orchestrator. We can configure these argument, okay, and that argument can be utilized in a code further processing. So currently you can see that we have two argument over here being specified by default in RFMO. It will come. One is says that in underscore orchestrator queue name, and the second is says that in underscore orchestrator queue folder. Means what is the folder of the queue and what is the queue name which we would like to process, right? So that is being as an argument being utilized. Now if I go to the initialization state, very first step, we are basically marking this system exception variable as nothing, because by default it should be nothing. If there is some exception being occurred, it will get initialized with that exception value, but by default its value should be nothing. Then there is a config variable. Config variable, if you see that we have written a condition over here, config is nothing, means whenever, if you guys can see that we are coming back to the initialization state again whenever a system exception is being occurred, right? You can see that whenever a system exception is being occurred, we are coming back to the initialization state. It doesn't make any sense to read the config data again and again, because we have stored the data inside the config file data inside the dictionary. So it doesn't make any sense to read again the Excel data, right? So that is why they have kept the condition over here. If config is nothing, that time we will going to read the config data, means the settings tab, the constant tab, and the asset tab data. And once we read that, we will basically having that data in place in our config, which is basically it will give us the output argument, right? So that out argument is nothing but the dictionary, which is string and object type. So once we got that, now if it is basically get failed at any time in the process transaction state, and if it is come to the initialization state again, it will see over here in this condition that, oh, my config is not nothing, I don't want to run this in the if condition. It will say that, yeah, config is not nothing, so it will not go to this first run, it will go to the else part. Currently we don't have anything inside the else part, so that it will not read the config data again and again. The config data is going to be read only once. At a very first, when you have launched your project, it will read the data, store it in a dictionary, that's it. Now if there is an exception occurred in a process transition state, and if it is come back to the initialization state, it will not going to read your config data. And this condition you can utilize also if, let's suppose, there is something you would like to perform only once. Let's suppose you would like to basically launch a application, okay, and you are aware that the application is not basically the execution, or you can say timeout in the application is very large, basically maybe one day. If you have created a session, that is going to be keep it 24 hours itself. So it doesn't make any sense that you are basically creating a session again and again whenever you are coming to this initialization state. That particular code also you can kept it inside the init part over here whenever you are saying like your config is nothing part over here in the top. So if I go down over here, let me just, yeah. So if something basically I would like to do only once, that step I can put it inside over here in this block. I can, in the first run block, I can put it over here, right? Means I would like to perform that action only once whenever my process is going to be run. That's it. I don't want to basically execute it again and again whenever a system exception is occurred. No, I don't want to do that. So that is basically we can utilize this part of the code. Got it or not? Any confusion on this? Pardon?
So, so
Okay. Now, the second thing which we are doing over here in the if condition, we are just basically, you can say reading the whatever the argument name argument is being provided in the in a runtime to the queue, basically queue name if project argument we have provided. So we are checking that if the value is not string.null or empty, means that something has provided from the runtime by the user when this process is being executed. So we are replacing this queue value. So you can see that this basically we have kept it over here. If I open the setting file again for you, so what we are doing over here, just a second. Yeah. So in the setting file, if you see that we have a queue name here, right? If I go to the setting tab, you can see that orchestrator queue name is the key. That is what we are doing over here. We are replacing the value of the key over here. Config orchestrator queue name, we are reinitializing it again with the value what user has provided to us at a runtime. That queue name we are giving over here. Same for folder name as well. If runtime we would like to basically go with the different folder, we can basically provide that folder, and that folder key value is going to be reinitialized over here, and that can reutilize for the processing, right? So this if condition is fine for all of us. This part, orchestrator queue name, and specify the orchestrator queue name and folder name. So far so good. Everyone, please, yes or no, yaar. Don't be sleep in the
Yes.
class. Okay. Now the next part is that kill process. Means that before basically doing any initialization, anything, we would like to close all the instances, whatever are being utilized in my process. Let's suppose there is a Chrome application is being utilized, there is a Excel application is being utilized, there is a SAP application is being utilized. If those are the applications being utilized, I can do those application to close inside the kill process YAML file. Currently, you don't have anything. I have written over here the UI demo force close over here. I have put it. You can see that I just basically utilize a kill process activity, which is basically I need to provide a process name, which process I would like to kill. If you would like to kill over here Chrome, you can specify instead of UI demo, you can specify Chrome over here. If you would like to close a, you can say, Edge or maybe SAP or something else, you can specify that particular process name over here to forcefully close it. Got it? Everyone?
Yes.
Now, the add log field activity we have already talked that if you would like to write any of the extra key in our log message, we can utilize this add log field activity. You can see that they have given this log business process name as a key, and what value they are using? They are using this log f business process name, which is nothing but this is my key, what they are using over there. This is the key they are using, and the value will be a academy ref UI demo. So this is my process name. Log app business process name is my key, and the value going to be academy ref UI demo. That is my key name, right? Now, the next part, a if condition. It is again same. I already give you the example, like what it is trying to do. It is basically comparing that whether we have encountered the system exception multiple consecutive time we have encountered a system exception or not. If it is encounter a consecutive time system exception, then it will throw an exception over here. And if we got the exception, if you go to the in a catch block, right over here, we have written a catch block. In a catch block, what we are doing, we are initializing the system exception variable with the exception object what we got. And as soon as this system exception object is being initialized, in a transition, we are checking that only. If system exception is nothing, it will go to the get transition data. If there is something in the system exception, it will go to the end process, right? That is the initialization state. Everyone got it or not? So far, Pratibha, Ratna, Yash.
Yes, Gopal.
Okay. Now there is a basically a workflow being written over here, init all application workflow. This init all application workflow, what it does, it will help you to whatever the application you would like to initialize, you will kept your code inside this init all application. Okay. Over here, you can see that I have basically utilized the UI demo open application workflow I have all over here inside this init all application. And what it does, it will basically first of all read the credential, as I told you, right? First of all, in a init all setting, we are reading the asset, but we are reading the asset, plain asset. We couldn't able to read the credential asset. But you can see that to read the credential asset, I need to provide over here get credential activity, which is helping me to read the credential type of data. And it will provide you the two output argument, which is nothing but a one username and password, right? And this is the key basically on which I would like to read the credential. This is we have created in the orchestrator, right? UiPath UI demo credential. You can see that we have already created that. So this is my key over here, UI demo credential, right? So that we are utilizing over here. Now what we are doing next, we are just trying to launch the application by providing the UI demo app path. So this app path is nothing but coming from here. We have provided this argument in underscore UI demo app path. And this app path we have given in my config file over here. If you go to the, in your asset, you can see that we do have an asset called UI demo application path, which is nothing but it's given in the orchestrator, which is this, right? So that is basically we have already provided here, and this we are providing in the argument, right? So now it is basically opening that application, trying to fill the username, trying to fill the password, click on the login button, and then as soon as it will log in, it will complete the task, means our initialization is done, right? So that is the init all application. Inside the init all setting, init all basically state, what we are doing initialization state, we are trying to initialize the application as well, right? And if any system exception is being occurred, it will go to the end process. Otherwise, it will go to the get transition data state. Now, in the get transition data state, we are basically checking this, if someone has pressed the stop button from the orchestrator. If not, then it will go to the get transition data state. In the get transition data state, you can see that what we are trying to do, we are trying to utilize a get transition item activity over here. And let me just delete this in underscore orchestrator folder path, because I don't want to break it my code right now. I have just keep it as blank. And over here, you can see that we just provided a orchestrator queue name. It will provide me the transaction item back. And this is nothing but the queue item type only, right? So this is my output argument. The get transaction item will give me a output argument. Mainly, this is my main argument, which I needed, called it as out transaction item, which is a queue item. On the basis of this only, I'm taking a action further. So you can see that further, we are just checking that out transaction item is nothing or not. What it is basically after getting it, is it nothing or not? Means whenever there is no transaction item is being available, it will give you as nothing only that time, right? So over here, we are just checking that if it is not nothing, then we are just increasing some value over here, like out transaction field value, transaction field 2 value, transaction ID, all those things we are giving over here. It is no longer basically utilized in the code especially, but these are the some metadata field value which basically UiPath kept it. Now, if you come over here, you can see that again in the basically, if any exception is being occurred over here, again in any exception is being occurred at the time of reading the transaction item, what we are doing in the catch block, we are marking the transaction item as nothing. Why? Because the transition will be handled on the basis of that only. No data means the transaction item is get as nothing, then only it will go to the end process. Otherwise, it will, if the transaction item is not nothing, it will go to the process transaction data state. Got it? On this part, everyone, no data when it goes, when there is no transaction item is being left to process, or is there any exception is being occurred in the get transaction data workflow, or someone has pressed the stop signal from the orchestrator. These are the three conditions when basically we don't have we will go to the end process. But in a new transition data, transition will be executed whenever there is a transaction item is being present, and we should process that transaction item. So it will go to the process transaction item state. Got it?
Yep.
Okay. Now, let's go to the process transition. What we are doing in the process transition, again, we have surrounded the process demo workflow. This is basically provided by UiPath Only this is the workflow basically where you write your all the code inside this process XAML file only. Whatever related to your processing of the data, you will kept it inside over here. So they have divided each of the part in chunks. You can see that you have a initialization part where you are basically doing a login mechanism, all those things. Once you logged in, now you would like to fetch the data. So fetch part is basically you put it inside the get transaction data state. Once you fetch that, now you wanted to process that data, so they have kept it inside this process.xaml file. Over here you can do whatever you wanted to perform. So currently what we are doing over here, we are trying to basically store our cache in honest check and not honest check values from the transaction item. How we are doing that? We are basically doing via the transaction item activity transaction item variable basically, which is nothing but the queue item. So currently you can see that in the process.xaml file, we do have two input argument. One is the transaction item, which is again a queue item, and the second one is the config file. Means there are something basically, if you would like to read it from the configuration, we can utilize this config dictionary as well. So to read from the dictionary, you already know that it again transaction item, we can basically how we can read the data utilizing this specific content. So transaction item dot specific content, then we have provided over here our key, which is nothing but this cache in, right? Let me go to the orchestrator, just a second. Yeah, so if I go to the orchestrator and if I show you the transaction, basically any of the transaction, let's suppose view details. So this is my key over here. This cache in key I would like to provide over here so that I can fetch the value, right? So and see this DEC over here is nothing but converting to the decimal basically. So there are multiple type of data type, right? Double, decimal, integer, float, nothing, or this decimal is nothing but we are trying to convert into the decimal type of data type, right? CDES. So over here, basically we are doing that only. Again, we are doing for all of that on that's the same, like honest check, same converting into the decimal. And you can see that the variable of the cache in honest check, not honest check is on the decimal type only, right? Once we fetch the data, after that, what we are doing, we are basically keep the sum of that in a one variable called transaction sum. So this will give me a sum of that not honest check, cache in, and honest check data. Once we got that, now we are checking a business condition. Before processing the data, we are checking a business condition that whether my sum is greater than the threshold value what user has provided me. If it is so, then I would like to throw a exception over here, a business rule exception. And whenever we raise a business rule exception, I'll show you that what will happen there. So we will throw a business rule exception. And if there is nothing is being occurred, no error is being occurred, it will go to the UI demo add transaction data workflow. And over here in this, we are basically what we are doing. We are providing it 4 argument. One is that cache in, honest check, not honest check, and transaction number, which transaction number it is executing, right? So now it is just basically, over here, as I already shown you in the cache in, basically it is trying to fill the data. It will try to populate the data in the application right now. So you can see that it just click on the accept and that's it. Now, once it's done, the process part is done. If it is get successful, if there is no error, let's suppose there is no error is being occurred, it will go in the process.xaml file. There is no error is being occurred. It will go to the set transaction data workflow. But if there is some exception is being occurred, it will go to the respective block. If there is a business rule exception, it will basically initialize the business rule exception and then basically go to the set transaction status block. Again, if there is a system exception is being occurred, it will initialize the system exception variable. You can see that it is initializing the system exception variable and then go to the set transaction status block. Why it is basically having a 2 variable over here? Because it on the basis of those variable only it is going to the next state, whether it is need to go to the get transaction data state or is it need to go to the initialization state. If there is a system exception is being occurred, it will go to the initialization state. If there is a business rule exception is being occurred, you can see that business exception is not nothing, then it will go to the get transaction data state. If it is successful case is that means there is no business exception, there is no system exception. That is only we are checking over here. System exception is not nothing and business exception is nothing. System exception is nothing, business exception is nothing. Both are nothing, then we are going to the get transaction data state. Otherwise, if there is a system exception is being occurred, it will go to the initialization state. That is the transition part. Everyone got this part or not? Any confusion over here? Before moving to this set transaction data workflow.
Got it.
Okay. Now this set transaction status workflow requires some argument. Mainly you needed this transaction item, which is called it as Q item basically, because you need that to set the status of the transaction item. Then you need a retry number. This will basically, I'll show you that how it is increasing that retry number. You can see that consecutive system exception only. This is the basically a variable which is basically increasing inside this set transaction status variable on the basis of if the transaction is successful or a business exception or a system exception. On the basis of that, it get increased by 1, and then it will give a input output value, means some value it will get it, and then updated value it will give it back to you. So that is the mean of input and output argument type. Now let's move into this set transaction status XAML file. So very first we are checking that is the transaction item is successful. Can anybody tell me how can I say that a transaction item is successful or false failed? In what situation I can say that transaction item is successful? Pratibha, Ratna, yeah, Shadon, go ahead, please.
If the exception is not, it's nothing.
Sorry, come again, please.
Oh, if the exception is nothing,
Okay, but only one exception, or you are referring to both the exception?
both the exception.
Correct, correct. If system exception and business exception is not nothing, then is nothing, then in that scenario, we can say that our transaction is successfully run and we will basically go to the success block. If there is any exception being occurred, then we need to again specify what type of exception is being occurred. Over here, we are checking that only if in underscore business exception is not nothing, means that business exception is being occurred. So in that scenario, this block is being executed. If business exception is not nothing, means that this condition is false, means that then that time it meant to say only system exception is being occurred. If system exception is being occurred, this part of the code being executed. Let's see one by one what we are doing inside this, each of the sequence of the success, business rule exception, and system exception, right? In the success block, we are not doing anything much. You can see that we are just saying over here in underscore transaction item is not nothing, and in underscore transaction item get type is a Q item. Then basically we are going inside the, means it is basically try to verify whether the transaction item is a Q item or is it something data table or a collection or something, right? If it is a Q item, then we are utilizing over here set transaction status activity. Over here you can see that we have provided the Q item variable in underscore transaction item, and we have marked it as we have marked it as over here successful. The application error type is by default being set it over here. We don't need to set anything over here, right? And let me remove this folder path as well. So over here you can see that we mark it as successful. That's it. In a else part, we are just saying that could not set the transaction status because it is not utilized as a queue, and then it is basically throwing an exception over here, rethrow it doing that, right? But as basically once it set the transaction item, now you can see that it basically some more key it going to add it, like transaction is get successful, what time it get executed, like all those basically it is adding over here some key to the log message. And once it is added, then it will finally say that log message underscore success, means that the success message it is going to write. Once that is being written, it will removing those transaction log extra key what we have added there. It is removing that so that it won't be again duplicated into the next transaction item, right? So that is the mean of this remove transaction item activity. Sorry, remove transaction log field. Then let's go with the business rule exception, what it is doing over here. In the business rule exception, let me just open it again. In the business rule exception, we are doing a similar fashion, nothing much. The same condition in underscore transaction item is not nothing, and transaction item type is a Q item. Then we are basically setting the transaction item, but this time we marking as a transaction status has failed, but the error type we are saying over here business. Okay, and we are giving a over here you can also give the why this basically the what is the reason behind the exception over here. So over here you can see that we having a two more argument. One is the system exception and one is the business exception. So one is the business exception and one is the system exception. These argument also we got it. And on the basis of if it is a business exception, we can fetch the message why this exception is being occurred using the business exception object, right? So in underscore business exception dot message will give me the reason why it is get failed. And over here in the error type, we will mark it as business. Now Pratibha will tell me if I basically mark the transaction item status as business, whether my transaction is going to be retried or not.
Can you repeat, sir?
So currently I have set the transaction item as failed. Reason I have given over here business exception message, basically whatever the business exception message I got, and error type I have given over here business exception, right? So if it is a business exception, tell me, does it going to retry or not if we have enabled the retry mechanism in our queue?
I guess yes.
Okay, Ratna,
Yes.
Sheldon, Yash,
Yes.
okay, Sheldon,
Yes.
and yes, what about you? Is it going to be retry?
I think no.
Why?
It's a business exception. It's a business
Correct.
exception.
Guys, where you guys are, yeah, why you guys are not, it's quite irritating me because dude, I basically from the very first session I was saying to you guys, not mug in the starting session also, today I have basically recalled that part. Whenever a system exception is being occurred, then only your transaction item is going to be retried. If it is a business exception, then what is the mean of business exception? If the transaction is need to basically handled by the business user, why we are retrying that? We are saying that bot cannot handle that. It need to be taken down by the business only or a manual user only. That is why we are raising this exception. Then what is the use of the business exception if you are going to retry it again?
So business exception cannot be retried, so it would be exit.
Correct. Business exception won't be retried. Only the system exception block is or system exception type of transaction item is only going to be retried. Got it?
Yep.
I understand.
Everyone, Ratna, Pratibha,
Yes, I
Yes.
understand.
Yes, sir.
where you guys are here? Why you are not basically following the sessions and all those things? You guys are not even watching the previous recording as well. Okay, anyway, let's move to that next part basically when the system exception is being occurred. So system exception part is little bit tricky, means not tricky, I would say more part is being written over here. First thing is that we would like to check that whether the queue retry, basically it is nothing but just that same condition what we have written in the success block, if you see that, or a business rule exception block to identify whether the transaction item is a queue item and it is not nothing, then in that scenario we are going to set the transaction status that only they have hold it in the queue retry. They are utilizing this condition builder. You can see that in underscore transaction item is not nothing, and also transaction item type is a queue item only. So that will give us a true or false. If it is a true, then it will come over here. Before basically checking the condition, they are taking a screenshot. So over here they have utilized this take screenshot XAML file which RE framework provided us. What it does, it will basically capture the screenshot in a screen and save it in a file, basically in a exception folder, so that we can utilize that exception screenshot as a source of truth why the bot is get failed, right? Business needed that. Sometime like you are raising an exception that, okay, 3 times your bot is get failed. Now business said you have basically sent a notification mail to the business user, the process is failed. They will come to you. Why the boss processes get failed? Where it get failed? How come you would tell that? So utilizing this take screenshot property, or you can say this XAML file will help you to capture the screenshot in a screen and send it as an image in a basically mail notification, so that business user or for your purpose also to monitor where the bot is exactly failing. Got it? Then there is a queue retry variable over here. A condition is being written. Over here again, we are doing a set transaction status. This time we are not doing anything. We just basically set the transaction status as failed. Reason we are utilizing from the system exception, and we are writing over here basically the screenshot path as well. whatever we have captured over there, that we are writing over here in the details section. And you can see the error type. This time we have put it as application. Whenever a application type of error is being written in a queue, the queue, if we have enabled the retry mechanism, the transaction item is going to be retried. If it is a business type, it won't, but if it is a application type of error, it always going to be retried. Got it? Everyone, please, yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. Now, IO retry number, basically, we are just increasing this retry number, or you can say we are just fetching that retry number right now. What is the retry number? In the queue item, we having a property called retry number. It will give us the integer value. So we are holding that value inside a IO retry number variable. And this is we are utilizing in our further steps. So over here, you can see that this consecutive system exception, you can see that we are increasing this variable now. Over here only we are increasing this because we got the system exception in the process transaction state. Over here we are increasing this by 1 in IO underscore consecutive system exception plus 1. That we are doing here. Got it? Everyone, please, yes or no? Then in the retry current transaction state, basically this is not applicable for your queue retry mechanism. It only applicable whenever you having a extra, basically you have not utilized the RE framework. Inside the RE framework, you haven't utilized the queue, but you are utilizing something else like maybe data table or maybe list or something. Then that time this part of the code will applicable. This is nothing but some condition they have written, like they are trying to check that whether the maximum retry number is greater than 0, means that whatever in the config file we have given as a maximum retry number, if that value is greater than 0, they are just reset the retry counter over here with 0, right? And then basically increment the transaction number by 1. Okay, increment the transaction number. Over here they are increasing the transaction number. If max retry, basically this part of the code is going to be executed whenever the max retry number is not reach, or you can say IO retry number is greater than the max retry number. Means in that scenario we are already reached the maximum retry limit. Now we would like to basically process the next transaction item. So that is the mean of this condition. And this is not applicable. This part of the code is not applicable for your you can say queue retry. Queue retry is being already written in your orchestrator queue. This is no longer applicable for that. But if you are utilizing a data table or a list, that time maybe you can utilize this part of the code. Okay? Got it?
Yes.
Everyone, yes or no?
Yeah.
Okay.
Got it.
Now we are just doing that close all application, means closing the application instances, because we don't want to, because it's a system exception is being occurred over here. So we don't want to basically, fail. So we would like to close everything and reinitialize it back again. So that is what we are doing over here, kill, process and close. That is what. And then if I go back to my last section over here, if you can see that there, if any success or business exception, we have basically utilized this increment block over here. We are not doing anything extra over here. We are just increasing the value, like IO transaction number we are increasing by 1, and we are resetting the value of IO retry number and consecutive system exception as 0, because we didn't get any failure right now. It's that, let's suppose you have first transaction item got a system exception, then second get failed. So currently IO consecutive system exception having 1 because it get failed first time, but now everything gets success, so the value get reset and it will become 0 again because it's not consecutive, right? So that is what we are doing over here, and this is basically your process block. Once your process block, any part like business exception is being occurred, it will go to the get transaction data. If success, it will go to the get transaction data. If there is a system exception is being occurred, it will go to the initialization state. Finally, you do have a end process. Whenever basically no transaction data is found in a get transaction data state, it will come to this end process. And here again we are doing a closing the instances of the application whatever we have used. And if you would like to send a final reporting mechanism, we can utilize in this state. Basically this is a final state of the RE framework. Everyone got this or any confusion in the RE framework now? in any of the block.
I got it.
Okay, let's debug our flow. Let's see how it basically executed. So you can see that first it is trying to, because it's the first time we are running. Currently it's saying that system string generic value couldn't able to convert to the string. Let me do one thing, because I have basically created a asset value as generic type. Let me just change it in not in the, it should be a string type. Let me just save it. Let's rerun it again. These kind of error you guys will face. So you need to, at a runtime, you need to handle it properly. So now you can see that we are reading the asset reading part is done. Now it is going to launch the application. So currently you can see that it is saying that build workflow does not refer to an existing file. So means something is going to break over here, cannot open an application because it is not able to find the application to be open. Let's do one thing. Let's create a selector back again for this, so that it will basically auto handle the path and we will provide that path over there. Okay, so just a second. Just a second. Yeah, so let me open it and indicate into the screen. Just a second. Yeah, where it goes. This is my, yeah. So here I would like to indicate on this screen. You can see that this is my path. Now I can provide this path. This is the path. Basically, I need to change my asset value. Okay, because I have given the wrong path over there. So application path should be this. It should include the application exe file as well. I haven't provided over there. So this is the path, right? Update it. Let me close everything here now again, right? Let's close this and Control Z. Yeah. Now let's run this again. So now you'll see that it has launched the application. It has written the password. It has basically now moved to my, process.xml file. Now I try to enter the data for first transaction item, right? Processing the first transaction item. Now basically, running the next transaction. It basically break something over here being occurred. You can see that it break. It will fail now. In the processing the transaction number 2, it get failed. So due to this, basically now it will not able to process further. So it will raise a system exception now. In that scenario, it will basically go to the set transaction data status as system exception, and it will retry this transaction number 2. If I go to the queue, let me show you. Currently, if I go to the queue and if I open this UI demo, so you can see that if I go to the very last, yeah, so you can see that currently we have picked 2 transaction item. First is being already successful because we have processed it successfully, but the second one is get failed because the application is by default, stopped by itself, and bot is not able to find anything. Let me continue over here and let's see how it basically handle this scenario. So currently, if I show you, there is no retry for this. Currently, it's in progress, right? Let me continue on this. So you can see that the system exception block is being executed in the set transaction data status. And if I go back over here, you can see if I refresh it now, you can see that again it may mark it as retried and created a new transaction item back again. Got it? Everyone? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Now it is trying to launch the application again. It is failing over here again because this application having some issue. It is, able to break by itself. It is not our issue. Basically, it is failing by itself right now, right? So now it's basically able to logged in again. Let's see whether it is basically able to enter the, see, it is get failed by itself again. Again, it is stopped working. So this application having some issue, but anyhow, our code is working fine. Our code is executing as a way basically it should run. Let me just help the bot to handle this scenario right now for a time being to show you, right? let's see whether it is able to now put the data over there or not. No, it is failed. Let me just try to retry this part. See, this application having some issue. Currently, this application is not performing the way it should be. So no worries. Basically, we are aware of that how the application, how the RE framework execution is being executed, that we know end to end basically. We got to know like what is happened in the system exception block, how the things being executed, and how basically a successful transaction item being processed. That is also we have already seen. And what basically happened in the initialization state, that also I have already shown to you guys. Right? Okay, so can I basically do one thing? Can I give you a task to you guys, like utilize the same process right now, whatever we have done, but not with this, you can say, with this get transition data, sorry, with this UI demo application, try to utilize the ACME test application in that case, a web application. In the initialization state, you can create a login mechanism for the ACME test. And then once the login is being done in the get transition data, first of all, manually, download the data from the ACME test. Like how you can do that, create maybe a workflow or something, you can do that, which can basically extract the data for you from the work items to fetch it, right? Once you fetch the data, upload the data inside the queue, and now you can basically write your code inside the RE framework to basically process that data one by one inside the Excel file. Maybe you can do one thing like in a process.xml file. Once you get the transaction data, you can write the data in one Excel file, making a status column in the same work items file, and mark it as completed whenever everything goes successful. If it is you found a business exception or a system exception, you mark it as failed. That is your task basically. Got it, everyone, or not? Yes or no, or any confusion here? Because we are parking now the RE framework we have already done, because we have seen like end to end how it